3.
Hi everybody, welcome back again. Speak Up Monday here at Tropical Nomad every Monday at about 6:30. So you can follow us on Instagram Live, or we have YouTube and obviously Facebook Live as well. Now, it's an inspirational Q&A where it's really about, who the person is, what makes them them, right? And, through that process of asking certain questions, we get to really uncover, how we're all connected together as human beings, right? So people inspire. People is one thing that we're very strong about. And the other one is Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which is unity in diversity. So I'm going to begin to interview or even speak to this week's guest. Welcome, mate. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thanks, brother.
Beautiful. So everybody, we've got Eugene Vassilas today, and if there's anybody here who really wants to know, what it's like to go to the other side and come back, what it's like to have a real appreciation and zest for life because you've almost lost yours, and then to go the opposite way and like how you can become a high performance coach over the globe and allow people to become the best they possibly can, allow people to reach and become that thing that maybe they've always wanted to become. This is part of the work that Eugene is doing, so I'm really interested to kind of hear a little bit more from him. So, again, Eugene, so this is your book, actually. Let's start there.
Let's kick it off.
Let's kick it off here. Yeah. So the Rebel's Bible, right? So the Rebel's Bible. Now, when I think of a rebel, I think of someone who is, like maybe fighting against the current, right? Fighting against popular opinion. Someone who holds to their own sense of value and right and wrong and all of this, and just is forging really powerful, strong paths in the world. But for you, could you explain to us what is meant by the Rebel's Bible and how you came to write it in the first place?
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening.
Good evening.
So this here represents 14 months of sitting and writing, but it represents a lifetime of struggle and worry and wondering. When I was 18, I was in a near-death car accident. High speed, drunk truck driver, car totaled, and I obviously survived. But after that, I survived with a lot of questions. First, I had to heal the body. And as I was healing the body, then I had to also figure out what I was doing in my head. It was a long road. One, much easier just brushing it under the carpet, which is what I did for a year. And then another good friend sitting on the back of a motorcycle with his new girlfriend. They hit a tree at high speed and they both died. I went to his open casket funeral, and looking at his cold, lifeless body, his voice came into my head and said, "Don't waste your life. You got a second chance, I didn't. What are you gonna do with it?" So I wish I could tell you it was just, wonderful, smooth, fun thereafter. It wasn't. Many sleepless nights, ton of worries and wonderings, and just, it was a pretty fucked up 20s, to be honest. But that led me to a deep state of misery, and then I thought, I'm gonna do something about this, because it's either that or I'm gonna waste my second chance. So I decided to leave where I was. I thought I'm going to need to find the people who have the answers. They didn't live in suburban Maryland where I was at the time. And I ended up traveling for 7 years around the world to find the so-called gurus. Of course, they had to have the answers, right? They were real. They were knowledgeable. They had audiences. They must know something. And the truth is, many of them did. And there were some things that I learned about boundaries, and I learned how to decide what makes sense for me. What I learned from all of that, I put into this. This is my baby right here.
Thank you for explaining that. Now, one of the things which, so by the way, we've met, but we haven't really spoken 2 minutes before, and now we're basically here. But here's the thing, right? So we all have these preconceived ideas or notions on what people are, the kind of life they've had, what they do for a living, right? How they respond to pressure and all of this. So with you, brother, like, the interesting thing with you is I thought, this guy's kind of quiet, probably an introvert. I wonder what kind of life this guy has or has had. And then a few weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago, after we had a particularly emotional Speak Up Monday, I remember you came up to me and said, Rob, and you were sat there in the back, and you said, Rob, I want to be on the show, and I'm going to blow you away. Something like that, but it wasn't from a place of ego. And I knew that, I felt that straight away. It was from a place of pure contribution, wanting to assist, support, and bless other people. And I got that immediately, that it was coming from that direction. So moving in a little bit deeper now. So you mentioned about the book. You've mentioned where the book came from. And you've mentioned one experience which helped to shift your direction. Now, for those people here who maybe are looking in the audience or looking in from online, they're probably wondering, well, you know what? I feel like my life needs a bit of a change. It needs a bit of a kick. It's COVID. I feel like I've been beaten up, right? I feel like, not beaten down, but beaten up. And I feel like, I just need something to help me to see what I can become, like a conscious pivot. So for those people there, is there any advice or experience or anything which comes to your mind if somebody came to you with that question?
So they're looking for a change. That's a big question, because I think change means something different to everybody. Change means something different to the same person depending on where they are in their life. Change has meant a million different things to me a million different times. I would say ask and look into where you don't want to look. Lift the rug, feel where the fear is, and go there. It's the most uncomfortable thing possible, but that's where the gold is. That's the simplest way to put it.
Got it. And before, during our 2-minute conversation, you mentioned about, what I loved as well is that, before you can support or assist people to go there, you need to go there. So you know what it feels like. So when you're talking to them, you're speaking from a place of truth, not a place of theory. So can you maybe take us on one of those journeys for you? Something deep, something you didn't want to look at, something that you were hiding away from, maybe what it was and how you came through it and what you learned from it.
With full respect to my father, I grew up with a strong Mediterranean father, and I have a sensible Scandinavian mother. And then I was born in a third culture, which is the States. So I had to reconcile these 3 very different energies within me. That's hard to do starting out. But then I had a father who, as with traditional Greek culture, the oldest son, which I am, takes over the family business and lives in the house across the street and, is just a good boy. That plan didn't work for me. And when he bought the house across the street and then kept hinting hey, when you're 18, and I kept wondering, how am I going to break the news that I'm going to college? It was one of the hardest relationships I've had. We've healed tremendously, and part of the reason that we've healed is because of all the work that I had to do. I had to do it for him, I had to do it for me, I had to do it for our family. Because it's a double bind. Family raises you, they want you to be one way, they want you to do one thing, and then you have to seize back your authority, your individuality, and do something with it. It's the hardest task in the world. But that's where it started, and it's lasted years, and now we're good friends, and now I can receive love from him. Before I was like, hey, stay right there. You don't support my life. I got to walk in my way. And of course, he supported it in his own way with his own values and was loving in his own way. But my 20-year-old self couldn't see that. My 20-year-old self was, get out of my way. I'm on fire. I got to go do something in life.
Got it. And I'm gonna dig. I'm gonna keep on digging, brother. Keep digging. So, give us an experience, something that we can understand you by. Yeah. At the moment, I get what you're saying, and it's very valuable. But I want to go deeper, and I know you can because I get who you are as a person, right? So give us one of those experiences that was dark and ugly for you, something you didn't want to look at.
So I'll tell you guys about a time that I was at a seminar in South America getting a set of skills. And like you're there, you're getting certified, and you're working with all your stuff. And basically, I had looked at my family system. I had tapped into the anger that I had felt. There was a time when I was young, and I remember my father said, we were in public, he said, take your hands out of your pockets. Well, I had my hands in my pockets because I wanted to feel safe. And I just felt that, I felt exposed. I felt like sad, angry, mad, like all of that was just compelled or put into a little box down deep. And then I opened the box, and then I had to relive the anger and the sadness and the exposure and the like all of that, but decades worth of stress. And I left that seminar that day fully deranged, like stable, but like not sure who I was, what I was doing, or why it hurt so much, etc. By the way, I don't think this is like exciting people to want to lift the rug and dig deeper. Guys, this is like one of my worst fears I'm talking about, so yeah. And then I had a friend who does healing work and so forth, and she's like, hey, let's talk about it. And it was just a simple looking in the eyes. She's like, just feel like held, but it came through the eyes. And there was, in that moment, I look at her eyes, and out of her eyes projects some weird, like, ghoulish whatever. I'm sober, I'm all good, but like this thing happens, and I scream. And she's like, what was it? I was like, you're evil. Like, I just saw your devil. You got an inner devil, I just saw it. She's like, no, I'm good. And I was like, no, she's like, that's yours. So that was me projecting my own like darkness onto others. And that day, it was hard for me to go and look in the mirror when I went home. I couldn't look in the mirror for a few days. I was just scared of my own reflection. I was scared of what I had within.
And that darkness, right? So me growing up, 2 children's homes in London, and like there's this kind of overt anger that is externalized in me hitting something, and the anger is being projected at something, someone. It's going out. But then there's that inner anger, which is this anger that's being suppressed. It's this anger which is like, I know it's not socially correct for me to go out and hit people because they called me the N-word. So I won't do it, but I actually really want to do it. So then that anger was just seething within me, right? It was like boiling beneath the surface, but didn't get an outlet. So I had some troubles with that, this repressed anger that came up later in situations which was harmless situations, and then I'm reacting like I'm like, like it's like, what's wrong with this guy? But it was that. So what I'm kind of hearing is this thing that we have of, our mind is saying one thing, but our truth is saying another. So like, how did you reconcile those?
I'll speak to the anger because it's a form of emotion that everybody feels. And why it's important, like I had to do a ton of work around anger. Anger is a socially semi-acceptable thing you can expose as a man. And of course, without getting into the distinctions, it's not so safe for men to cry, but if you scream and so forth, in theory, it's a bit more safe. I realized that if I wanted to actually help people, I could only do that to the degree that I dealt with my own stuff. So I had to look at the anger, and that, I mean, in a simple day, that might involve like screaming into a pillow. That might involve every time I used to go to the gym, like feeling into my body, where was that, and thinking about that thing, that situation, that pain every time I did a thing. It often meant also coaching and working with several types of healing people. It just, bottom line, meant not looking away.
You know, it's interesting because over the years, I've done a bit of, I like to call it letting go as opposed to work. Not because it's a wrong term or incorrect, but only because, you know, it is work, but I find that when talking to people, be they clients or friends and so on, if I say to them, you know, this is going to take work, people, they're like, oh, I don't think I want to do any work. Whereas if I say, well, look, you got to let some stuff go, then they're like, yeah, I guess I can let some stuff go. Somehow it's more palatable in their mind of letting stuff go than having to do the work, right? So coming from that perspective in a way, so because I'm interested now and curious to know, so which courses or which modalities or which ways of you being able to let stuff go or do the work were you following or did you do?
Well, I'd like to speak to that point because so far I've made a hard case for doing hard work. And I gotta say, it's still the thing that gives the biggest dividends once you do it. So I had a little screaming session and like, you know, got some stuff out. I'm lighter. The next day I can go and feel different. And like that affects everybody you meet. Your lightness, your gentility. So this is why I've dedicated my life to this. I feel there's no bigger return on time, energy, money, etc. With that said, I don't think all modalities are created equally. And I think you have to listen to what your needs are. If you if you're movement oriented, try dance, do embodiment stuff. If you, like me, have a pensive mind, I needed stuff that was more analytically oriented. Like there's a benefit and a curse to being smart. So I needed something that I felt could hold me mentally. So I needed to work with practitioners that were smart and that could also hold the intensity of me. Which again, I think when you look at somebody, you see 6 people. You see them, but then you see mom and dad, and you see their mom and dad, and so forth, like generations. I happen to have like really strong male individuals and really strong females as well. But all of that, I had to contend with all of that energy. If I'm carrying stuff from mom and dad, well, guess who's got to reconcile it, or they pass it on.
And that intergenerational trauma, or give it another word, experience, pressure, or something else which I can't think of right now. So you said before that, you know, in a way that has to stop with me, right? It's going to stop with me. So your parents, you said they were both strong. Now your father, you already explained what kind of individual he was, but how was your mum, and how did she affect you growing up?
So let me say that my parents are both incredibly loving, and each of us love in our own ways. And I received a very special type of care from my parents, respectively. Dad provided, dad shopped, dad cooked, mom was there emotionally, mom tended to, you know, my cuts when I fell off my bike, mom read me bedtime stories. And what was the rest of the question? So here's the interesting part, right? So this is a Q&A, but it's not even about the questions, actually. It's about what is triggered by the question. And whatever that is what's supposed to come up, which is quite interesting. So you don't need to worry about that. But what it did do was prompt me with something else. So
here's the thing. So you're a high-performance coach out of many other things that you're doing. So what I find is that, that's a life of contribution, right? That's a life of helping others, as I mentioned earlier on, to become their best selves. So from the context of that, right, because often when we're younger, there's things maybe which are driving us, which are pushing us in a certain direction to become or to want to experience certain things. So if you didn't always believe that you'd be a high-performance coach, right? If that wasn't in your bucket list from the age of 10, like, I want to be a high-performance coach, right? Where did that whole thing come from, do you think?
So I would love to say that life is a choose where you are, choose where you want to be, and get there type of path. For me, at least, it's not. And my life has been full of at least 7 years of winding roads. Those winding roads are life, though. So in those years that I traveled, I went to find those so-called gurus. They were teaching NLP, they were teaching hypnosis, they were teaching body work, they were teaching systemic work. They were in China, they were in Brazil, they were in India. I've been doing yoga for 25 years, etc. But I had to kind of figure out, well, what are the little pieces that I want to take? What are the pieces that I want to integrate? So high performance, I think, it's like high performance according to what scale, according to what time of your life, according to what goal, according to 1,010,000 things. But I think there's a deeper question here, which is about your relationship to doing stuff, your relationship to feeling good, your relationship to when you wake up, your eyes open every day, and you put your feet on the ground, what goes through your head? Performance, great. You got a deadline, you're incentivized with money, high five. We still have to deal with who we are at the end of the day. So my take on high performance is work from the inside out, and then you see people can make magic happen, and it's easy. Like the behaviors and the habits are completely irrelevant. Those come from identity level change. Change who you think you are, and what you do changes.
Change who you think you are, and then what you do changes. Love it, from the inside out. So for some people here, I think what would be valuable is that, we'll get into the high performance stuff in a second, but is there any particular way that you prime yourself? Could be a morning routine that people here maybe could say, hey, I love what you're saying. I get that, you had these incredible experiences when you were younger, and we'll get into the yogi stuff in a second, but you had these incredible experiences when you were younger. They can see the reason what drives you for becoming this high performance coach. But then, and they've also heard, right, that it's about, as you just said, right, changing from the inside out. So how about we give some people here an idea of what that looks like? So when you wake up in the mornings, and before you go to sleep, is there anything that you do to prime yourself, to give yourself that wake up with an edge feel?
There's a ton of stuff. Before my eyes open each day, I keep them closed for 30 seconds or so, and I feel into my body, and I just feel what's here. Sometimes there's tightness, sometimes there's angst, sometimes there's worry, sometimes there's happiness, sometimes there's something. And then usually I keep a quiet morning, and I meditate, I do intense yoga, fast, gotta get the blood flowing, and then I'll go into a class of movement, weights, etc. Now, that's just the morning. By the time I'm done with that, now my responsibilities are starting. So then the question is, how do you go from, for example, sitting at the sauna at Body Factory and then putting yourself into, now I want to be available to help the human heart? And I got to confess, that's not always an easy transition. Like sometimes I just want to sit in a quiet room and read or write. Sometimes I feel like, I just don't want to talk today. I just want to, there's so much stuff happening on the inside that if I don't tend to it, then I'm not present outwardly, I'm not present inwardly, and that stuff is arising because it wants to be dealt with. So I'm constantly journaling. I journal at night, every night before I go to bed. If I'm having an intense day and I'm going through a mindset change, I am journaling multiple times throughout the day. Anytime there's a secondary thought, for example, let's say I have a task to write a chapter. If there's a secondary thought, I've got a second tab open, and as soon as I get the wayward thought, I put it onto the tab, and then I'm back to what I'm doing. And I'm also wrestling my mind a lot of the time, in the sense that, like, my mind has its own impulses and its own desires and whatever. And if left unchecked, it'll go to the moon. So I don't really take it seriously. I'm kind of like, oh, look, I'm wandering off in that. Okay, let's just come back. So I look at, I think, first of all, we have multiple parts. I think there's an inner executive, an inner president, an inner leader, an inner governor, whatever you want to say, or an inner sheepdog that's herding the sheep that are my thoughts. You know, they want to go this way and that way. Nope, come on, come back. And then I'll do it 1,000,000 times a day. Doesn't matter. I know where I'm going. I got to get there. Let's set the sheepdog out to do its work.
Got it. And I think today is feeling more like strategy day. Interesting. I go with the energy, man. So if you could give people here, either here or watching, by the way, Bella or Ichi, my camera's running out of battery again. If you could help, that would be great. So if there's a strategy, so your mind is wandering, right? By the way, what I'll do is I'll give you a little bit of a break. So there's this monk called Dandapani, right? You can find him on YouTube, Instagram, Dandapani, amazing guy. And he had this incredible lesson about the mind and awareness. So some of you may have heard this before, but I found it, the moment that I heard it, it just clicked. And I was just like, wow, I get it, right? So the mind and awareness. So the mind is a map. And in this map, you have all different destinations: love, anger, joy, sadness, tears, jealousy, rage, elegance, beauty. So all these are different parts of the mind, like a map. And then you have this ball of light that travels around, right? So now this is your awareness. So your awareness is traveling around this map of your mind, and then let's say you're having thoughts about jealousy, then it will stop in that map or that area where jealousy is contained. And then what it will do is it will illuminate that area of the mind. And these are the thoughts and feelings that you begin to feel and attract to you even more than you were doing so before. And if you stay there, then you probably realize you're going to spiral down, right? And hopefully we stop somewhere or we keep on going, right? So that is the mind and awareness. So then really what you're talking about now is that, you know, when your mind starts to wander and do some crazy stuff, it's about knowing where your awareness is and then redirecting that awareness to a place where you want it to be. Right? So the mind and awareness. Okay, so coming back to you, my brother. So is there any strategy, maybe 3 parts, that you could give to everybody here, maybe who's watching or those who are watching online, to help them to redirect the awareness of their mind into a place that will reap more results that they actually want for themselves?
So each of you are listening, and this group happens to be sitting, but I imagine some people are laying down, but we all sit at some point throughout our days. Looking at the posture is the simplest way to come back to awareness, in addition to breath. But right now, for example, a lot of you have either 2 feet up or 1 foot off the ground. What I like to do is just notice 2 feet on the ground and the 4 corners of each foot connected to the earth. And if I'm standing, I'm like, oh, look, what percentage of my weight is on the right foot? What about the left? And then I'm seeking symmetry. For example, right now, my spine, and this comes from yoga, but my spine is reclined. This is not a symmetrical, this is this is not a powerful position for my full awareness. This, on the other hand, is long spine, top of the head connected to the sky, feet on the ground, and even more ideally, like your hips wouldn't be at an angle. They would just be at a 90 degree, 90 degree, 90 degree. You elevate your spine, and somebody in here knows exactly what I'm talking about, and everywhere I go, I'm always sitting up straight, and let me get good back support, and let me like be aware of the positions of my shoulders. But this couch, for example, and a lot of chairs are made to disempower you. Strong, I'm not in my power here. In my power. Here I can act, I can move, I can do something. Here, no. But this is comfortable. So now it's like, what's comfortable and what's awareness? And we're going through that all day. Comfortable awareness. This represents also the choices that we make. The cookies are on the table. Those would be comfortable in my belly. Or awareness is like, nope, the cookies they won't feel good tomorrow.
And now, so let's move to your experience as a yogi. So for 20 years, I think you said earlier on that you were studying the yoga, right? So can you tell us a little bit about how you found your way in and what you learned?
I found yoga by observing my mother doing weird postures on the living room floor and making weird breath noises and whatever. And like I was 8 and I'm like, what's that? And she's like, this is yoga. And at some point, I had to just get curious of, well, what happens to my body if I try? And then I forgot all that. And when I was in the accident and I had a ton of pain and I had a prolonged pain, I had to go back to it. So that's when I kept getting into, well, what happens if I stretch in the morning every day? Do I feel better? Do my ideas process easier? The bottom line is we have a deep, profound relationship to our bodies. And a lot of people treat their bodies as like it's a taxi from here to there. But the point is, how do you make your body home? And people who have been through trauma, that's like a real challenge. But every day, I'm also telling myself, I love my body, I feel comfortable in my body, you're my vessel, you're my spiritual home, etc. That's available to everybody too. Like, you spend your whole day in here. What do you want to do with it? How do you want to feel? It's temperature control inside your body. You know, you could be the thermometer, which is like how you feel changes anytime you enter and exit a new conversation or an environment, or you could be the thermostat, and you can set the temperature that you want.
And the connection to yoga.
Yoga is, in my understanding, just awareness of the body and a profound philosophy for union to everything. So yoga is not only movement, but it's how you are, it's how you think, it's kindness, it's 1,000,001 things.
So when I was doing yoga, what I learned was this incredible connection between postures and the internal workings of our body. So for example, if I was feeling down, then I would do these different yoga poses. It would squeeze certain organs in a certain way that would release certain chemicals into the bloodstream and and I would just feel more grounded, or I would just feel a bit brighter. I wouldn't feel down anymore, you know. So I found that yoga had this incredible effect and impact on my thoughts and how I dealt with these things that come up in my mind called thoughts. So for yoga, with you, is there anything that stands out for you as that's the thing that yoga taught me?
I think yoga taught me that the body is bidirectional, in the sense that a posture can change your feelings, and how you feel changes your posture. So, for example, if you, again, back to, if I sit up like this, if I spread my legs, if I stand like this, if I cross my legs, all of those have a different feeling to them. And if I feel a certain way, for example, if I feel disempowered, I might be sitting like down like this, like my head looks down, eyes go down, everything goes down. So half of this is just bringing the body up.
And then, so all of these things to me are really beautifully relating to a high performance coach and the sorts of things that you deal with clients or friends or people that you just met, right? So let's get back to that. So when we're talking about high performance coaching, what or how would you explain that to people here? And what are some other things that you would do, or maybe you have done if you have a certain client that comes up, don't need to mention their name, but something that they came to you with, something that you're able to impart to them, and how that helped to change their life?
CEO comes to you and says that they have no time, they're doing more than they have to, their partner's not pulling the work, and they don't know what to do. Okay. You could talk to them about productivity, about time management, about 1,000,001 things. But the truth is that there's another layer. And that's the layer that I always like to look for. And I get curious, and then I end up finding the most wild connections. Like, this CEO doesn't feel strong enough to address his partner's laziness because 40 years before, he had a similar conversation with his aunt and made him feel small and bad, and that's what he's replaying every time he thinks about talking to the CEO or to his partner. So the result is he works doubly as hard. He's not there for his wife because he's like working till 12 every night, and he's discombobulated. So it's like, this is not a popular topic, like to what lies beneath, but it's the fastest and simplest way, sometimes the most intense, to just be done with the thing. Be done with the pain, be done with the whatever. It's just stored so that you can look at it and let go.
So this looking at it and letting go. So part of the work which I was doing was, was based around that. So it's for those of you watching, it's like this. So as you mentioned prior to that, maybe when you're a young kid, right, you may be doing something in the garden, right, and then you were frightened by something. Right? The first thing is your shoulders go up. Maybe your hand goes up, but your shoulders go up, and you're like, right? And this is the fear. But and you might be a spider, it might be a snake, it might be someone else. Like, I love playing practical jokes on my family. I try and scare them when they're not expecting it. I have a very high success rate of practical jokes against my family. They hate me for it. I love it. Anyway, so you get scared. Locks into your shoulders, right? Now, when this happens continually with different things in your life, this experience gets locked into it's not really your muscles, but it gets locked into your body. Then when you're doing things like yoga or activities that then begin to free up, then the experience that you had comes back and is almost relived, perhaps as an anxiety within you. So that's why sometimes when you do a yoga session or a breathing session, there's some guy in the corner going, and another guy's going like, maybe you're not going to the same sessions as me, but I can give you some details. So that's what's going on, right? So these things are locked into your body, and you're releasing them by doing certain things. Now, based upon just the story that you shared there, like, is there any other kind of crazy thing that you've seen at the time when someone's releasing something that you can explain to us?
So first of all, I'm going to comment on what crazy is, because we have a really narrow spectrum for what's allowed in society. I went to a workshop where 52 men were screaming at some point, and that, to anybody walking by, would have been crazy. But to every man in there having like a cathartic process, that was just normal. So yeah, I think we first have to look at what crazy is. I mean, I've had screaming bouts, I've had psychedelic experiences, I've had hypnotic regressions. I work with hypnosis, so a lot of the time I'm also in exploring timelines and who do you think you are today? Who were you in the past? Who do you imagine yourself in the future, etc. Our concept of who we are is so limited, and as soon as you just open the door to a couple more possibilities, you see that the entire world is available.
And on those experiences, you mentioned them hypnotic, cathartic, induced by other things, let's say. So that natural experience that you had, that near-death experience. So can you take us through, what happened in the sense of, because most people here, they always want to know, like when they hear about a near-death experience, what did you see? What did you feel? What was life like on the other side, right? So to those sorts of questions, I would love to hear what happened to you.
So I have my own personal experience, and I've also read several books and talked to several people about what death is like. And everyone's experience is different. Mine happened to be moving at high speed. I felt the truck collide with the back of my car, and I was in the second to innermost lane, and then my car did a fishtail, and in the time where my car was going from 90 miles an hour this way to 90 miles an hour this way, my life didn't flash in front of my eyes. It didn't flash. I didn't see visuals, but instead it was kinesthetic. I felt the deepest sadness that I've ever felt in my life, thinking about my mom, my dad, sister, and then the idea that I'm too young to and then that's when I impacted the concrete divider. Now, then I thought it went to zero. I thought, that's it. But I opened my eyes again. This time, though, I was moving horizontally on the highway, being pushed by this truck. So that's a whole second trauma. Thinking that the truck isn't slowing down and it's actually putting gas and moving faster. But I have good news, and that is that, generally speaking, what I understand about death is that it's a really light process. From what I've read or heard, and I've had different people talk about it, it's like this little portal. Again, I don't know because I haven't gone the full way. I don't think anyone in this room has. But it's like a little portal opens 20 degrees above your eyesight, and then it's this big light, and then you go on this long conveyor belt type of thing, and then all of your pains and worries are lifted. It's like what you would feel at your best drunk. It's like you don't remember, you don't care. It's kind of great. And there, apparently, you go to this place where all your loved ones are, and then you're like, wait, how old is everybody there? Well, apparently they're all in their early 30s, looking sexy, and just fucking.
It sounds like a great place. I don't want to visit there anytime soon, but it sounds like a great place. It's interesting because there's this lady called Bronnie Ware. I'm not sure if anyone here has heard of Bronnie Ware, W-A-R-E. She is a nurse who works, there's a special term that will probably come back later on. And so she works in a terminal ward. Done so for many years. So she is in palliative care, that's the word, palliative care. 2 weeks, around 2 weeks left to live, basically. And over the years, she basically asked the questions. Her book is called Regrets of the Dying. So check her out. Regrets of the Dying is really amazing, actually. So she asked the question, which was, is there anything that you regret, right? And so over years, she put the answers into a certain order based upon the frequency of people saying, that's what I felt. I won't go through all of them, but number one wasn't to do with money. It wasn't to do with anything that they had really done necessarily that they've achieved in their lives. The number one regret of the dying for human beings, according to Bronnie Ware, is the fact that I didn't do what I wanted to do. I did what other people wanted me to do. I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but it's basically that. In other words, the biggest regret for people dying in that particular ward was, living someone else's dream. Like you mentioned before about your dad, wanted you to be a certain way. And you're like, well, Dad, I am a rebel, right? I'm not doing that. I want to go my way. I want to forge my own path, and all power to you, brother. But in how many of us, maybe if you're watching this now, or maybe it might drop into your head later on, have that thought or the understanding like, oh shit, I'm living the life that my dad wanted me to live. I've gone into blah, blah, blah career. I'm doing blah, 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 which I don't really like, but I'm doing it to make my dad happy, or make my mum happy, or make my granddad happy, or whatever it is. So the number one regret of the dying is that, something that just popped in. So coming back to you, my friend, so spiritual. Now, we had a very brief chat earlier on, and near-death experience, and you mentioned something really interesting that pricked my ears up, was that, you do have an awareness or a practice, but it keeps on evolving, right? Which I love. And so maybe whatever you feel comfortable to share, in other words, share everything, right? What is that awareness or that practice that you're currently doing now? Would love to hear it, and I'm sure people here would love to hear it as well.
So I had a burning point that I wanted to make about something you said earlier, but it'll come back. My practice right now is I work a lot with sound, and I work with meditations, and I work with guided meditations that lead you to an outcome that you want. And most of us are spending time in our heads thinking all day. So there's a technique by which I create scripts, I record them, and then I play them in the background so that my voice is always guiding my own consciousness. And since it's my own voice, my brain's like, oh, look, I know this voice. It must be true. Except these are all better suggestions than the ones I was thinking before I wrote the script. So I do this weekly. And every week I also review like what I set out to do, what I did or not. Half the time it says fail, 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 fail. Half the time it says win, 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 win. And that's just life.
And look, one thing I've got to say though is that your voice is very calming, man. Like I could, and don't take this the wrong way, but I could drift to sleep with his voice, right? Don't tell me I know you can. I know you feel it too. It's got this very calm, clear, deep nature that is very calming, man. It's very cathartic. It's beautiful, brother. So I get why that would work. And then maybe for people here who, don't understand how either auto suggestion works or NLP in that sense, could you explain what's actually happening in your mind and body when you're listening and hearing yourself?
This might be a roundabout way to explain it, but you've been to the movies. When you sit in movies, you sit in a theater, and for 2 hours, you're in suspended reality. Your critical faculty, the part of your mind that said this is right, that's wrong, this is up, that's down, whatever, doesn't exist. You accept it as real. So that's essentially, I try and get to that place as often as possible. So you can do that with stories. You can do that every time you turn on Netflix. You can do that when you're listening to somebody. Is that, yeah.
And so do you subscribe then to the, when you're sleeping, you got the brain entrainment, those those sounds coming through repeated. So is it working with the theta frequency? Mm. So is that the sort of process that you tend to follow sometimes? Or?
So when you get into the types of waves and the different frequencies and so forth, like there's a lot of biohacking technology and whatever, and it gets like really, it's sexy technology. But I think it gets away from the fundamental thing, which is you breathing, sitting, being, and feeling. And those are already immensely hard. Let's pretend you're in that same movie theater, but there's nobody there and there's nothing on the screen. How fast until you are bored, looking at the ceiling, getting wild, let me out of here? COVID has put us through all that. So sitting in a chair in a quiet room, sitting with yourself, I think is the hardest thing that exists. And it still challenges me, depending on where I am, what I'm going through, etc. But I got to do it. And the reason I have to do it is because I'm going to pay with one of two things. I'm either going to pay with attention or I'm going to pay with pain. And I paid too much with pain in my life to want to keep doing that. I did that. I'm good. Time to pay attention. And that's life. Life will shake us and slap us until we decide to heed its messages. And it's hard, but it's so gratifying. And then that's where we get into the flow.
And I mean, from that perspective, something which I heard not so long ago, actually, but it just resonated for me, is that a lot of the time we feel that life is happening to us, whereas in actual fact, life is happening for us. And when we look at it from that perspective, then the things that happen that maybe arrive to us as challenges is just life saying, hey, this is something here that you need to acknowledge and maybe let some stuff go or do some work, right? This is what's going on. So is that in that realm?
Totally.
Yeah.
I used to believe that life was a shit show. And I've mentioned even on this podcast several times, life is hard, etc. That's mostly to meet people where they're at. Like the next stage is life is a fucking joyride. You want to make it whatever you want? Like everybody here is already in Bali, and people listening, they're thinking about Bali. Every day you get dressed. Every day you choose what foods to put inside of you. You choose when to go to bed, how to sleep, how to exercise. Your entire life is mostly constructed by these small decisions. So you kind of can decide, hey, I like how that person's living. I want to live like that too, and then do so. So I'm constantly investigating people's lives that I think, for whatever reason, are desirable. And then I'm just deciding, how do I want that to look like for me?
Who have you been investigating recently, or the last one you can remember?
I love athletes. Kobe, back in the day. Just a strong mind. But, Oprah Winfrey, actress Audrey Hepburn, a lot of people, Paul McKenna, who works with hypnosis.
So this is like it reminds me of Minority Report, Tom Cruise movie years ago, where he is using this technology. So the screen, which is not a screen, like a piece of glass, basically allows him to reach down and draw down whatever it is he needs to solve this challenge. And what it sounds like to me is like you're saying, well, what kind of person do I want to be? Right? Going back to what you said earlier on the inside, who am I inside out? And then what can I take and imbibe for me to have that feeling, and then the life responds to me like that. So for example, with Kobe Bryant, I mean, man, that guy's mindset was off the charts. Oprah Winfrey, I still listen to now, right? I think she's one of the most incredible people on the planet. I think she's fucking phenomenal, right? Sorry to speak French. And so then if there's someone out here now saying, I get the concept of choosing the bits that you want to imbibe to be that person, to have those experiences, but how do you do it? Right? So how do you do it?
So let me take the opposite standpoint and challenge you all. How do you not do it? How do you keep repeating the same shit that you did yesterday that didn't work? How do you replicate that the next day? There's a strategy for that. Like you're literally having to replay an old memory or do the thing that's familiar instead of watch a video on YouTube and see, what do they believe? What do they tell themselves? What's their dialogue like? Like I'm looking at all of these things and I'm taking notes. I really think life is like an easel and you get to paint whatever you want. And that's, again, the privilege and the challenge. You may not be a talented painter. I wasn't. But I've been in painting class for the last 15 years. And I want to create great works of art. And I think it's available to everybody. And the first thing is choosing to do so. You have a million reasons why not to, I know. And you've got great distractions. Like as soon as you leave here, you'll pick up your phones, you'll go out there, you'll just be distracted, and that's okay. But at the end of the day, right before bed, there's a part of the day that's quiet. And in that moment, in that part, there is so much opportunity.
So guys, we're going to come to you for questions in the next few minutes. So if you've got any questions in your mind, make a mental note and we'll get to you. So now, when somebody is about to go to sleep, what either practice or way of being, thinking, acting, can you pass on to them to ensure that they wake up in the most enlightened state, the best state, the most powerful state?
The simplest sentence and the most healing sentence is, what do you want? What do you want? I ask myself that 100 times a day. And in the old days, the number of times I deprived myself from what I wanted was huge. But now I see, what do I want? What do I really want? And the mind, at least in its limitations, is constructed to offer you what's available, what's familiar, what's convenient, what's low-hanging fruit. What do I really want means doubling the size of the goal. It means doubling and reaching higher and higher, until you meet fear. So it's like, what do I want? Let me explore what I want until I get scared. That's probably the sweet spot.
Man, now you got my juices going. Fear. How do you handle, and I promise I'm going to come to you for questions, how do you handle fear? How do you instruct, advise your clients or yourself how to manage or how to deal with fear?
First is through expectation. Expect you're going to be afraid. I'm afraid all the time. Doesn't matter. I'm scared of a million things. And in fact, if I'm not scared, it means I'm not living. Life, by definition, is dangerous. You're supposed to be scared. You're supposed to stay alive. So, secondly, what do you have to do to befriend it? It's this big, scary thing, and it lives in your psyche somewhere or in your body. Like, how could I make friends with that part? So I do some systemic constellation work. And when I was writing this book, I can't tell you how scared I was all the time. I was scared, will my ideas matter? I was scared, will I ever finish? It took me 14 months. Every day I'd get up, I'd go to the desk, and anybody who's written kind of knows what that's like. I was lonely, I was isolated, I was 1,000,001 things. And one day I constellated myself, which basically just means I made a diagram of what the parts that were inside of me. And there was the writer part of me, and then there was fear, which was on top of it, punching it in the head. That's how scared I was. And then I did some techniques and this and that, and then later, when I revisited the diagram, the fear was still there. It was still like punching my writer brain. But then there was another part, which was called, you can do anything you want, and you're going to get through it, perseverance, that was punching fear in the head. So we've got these parts. Sometimes they're in a big chaos. But I want fear there to keep me alive. It's factory installed for a reason. It perks me up. It gets me to pay attention. There's a reason for that. I was once on a panel, and there were like 10, 15 people to my side. I was the very last speaker, and I was like, this is a great time for me to just relax. I just started to get into like deep meditation processes, and I was like, you know what, since I'm last, I'm just going to relax. I'm going to try this relaxed way to really connect with the audience. And by the 15th person, I had relaxed myself so much that my like vital energy, I was just like, hello everybody. And I noticed people looking at me in the audience like, what the fuck is up with this guy? Like, what's wrong with him? But I outdid the natural like fear that keeps you awake and paying attention and like giving your best. Make it a friend. Bring it in. Bring it to lunch.
Love it. I must admit, that's the most interesting, for want of a better word, definition of fear. I get like a visual, right? And I'm sure you do too, of like one here bashing you and then fear hitting that one. I'm like, yeah, I can work with that image. Amazing. Yeah, I love it, man. Love it. So look, guys, so questions. So what you do, just put this thing called a hand. Just put that sucker up, and one of these will arrive to you. And just remember to point it towards your mouth. Sounds crazy, I know, but how many times people are, do this? So point it towards your mouth. So any questions, guys, please put your hand up.
And if you guys are still thinking about that, I'd just like to honor and congratulate you, because a lot of this topic I know is like a layer deeper than you might normally think about or want to go. And even my former self, like I used to squirm at these things. So I want to say thanks for holding space for yourselves.
Absolutely, yeah. So any questions? If you haven't, it's okay. It means that you're thinking. There you go. All right. I think my phone wasn't on.
Check. Yes, it's on. I have questions. As a high-performance coach, what was your most difficult experience when you did coach these people? For example, I imagine when people too stubborn about their mindset and they didn't want to change, but they hire you as their coach. What did you do?
So those are two very different questions.
Okay.
My biggest challenge was getting started, and it was dealing with the imposter thing of like, how can I show up and give people wisdom? That took me a long time to like sit with the ideas, or as we say in yoga, to digest them. And it's like, yeah, who are you to tell the world how to live their lives? But then I realized, who am I not to tell the world? Who am I not to help others? I'm sitting here doing the back-breaking works to make other people's lives easier. I'm helping them. So it's like, who am I to ignore the thing that I think I'm called here to do, no matter how awkward or weird or uncomfortable it is in the beginning? Second question. I've had really hard clients. And I think the higher you climb on the ladder, the more sure you are of your reality, or so you think. You're sure of your tasks and how busy you are and how right you are and how etc. I felt all those things myself too. And so a challenge for myself and for others, and a curiosity, is how do you always get back to the place where you're surprised with how dynamic life is? So I expect clients to throw mud at me in the beginning. First 2 sessions, I know it's going to be a dance of cans and can't do's. It's okay. Almost any time I work with a high-performing male, they're testing me. And that's okay. I think everybody's testing everybody. It's just part of the thing. And I'm always like, how soon do we get to move to the stage where we actually get into the work that you're here for? But resistance is a powerful force. And so I want to incorporate it. I don't resist the resistance. I'm like, oh, you don't want to do the thing? You don't want to do that? You don't have to. But live with the consequences.
Okay, I got it. Once more.
Yeah.
How did you win that situation?
So let's call it aggression. Let's call it a strong opinion or power or whatever. Anytime power meets empty space, it dissolves. So I've had to cultivate like a space inside of me, and it's still sometimes hard. But how quickly can I go to empty? Somebody leans in, etc. Sometimes I want to push back. The Mediterranean flavor comes back. But as soon as I do, sometimes it's all, if I could just borrow your hand, sometimes it's as soon as touching the intensity that I just turn and let the intensity meet empty space. So it's like you meet it where it is, you honor it, and then whoop, you can go that way.
You know, what that triggers for me is, so I won't mention any names because I don't do that stuff, but I was dealing with a very strong situation. I love that point, man. A very strong, so I used to run nightclubs for a long time, 25 years. And whilst running nightclubs, I was the guy at the front door who used to manage all the front door as well. So I was the guy who's saying yes and no to people, okay? And I was also the guy who was brought in to de-escalate potentially frightening situations. So I was that guy too. And I was having this conversation the other day with a friend about this, and he just described it perfectly right, which is, you know, probably the first thing which I do is I let them have it. I let them have it. What does that mean? Two friends the other day who are not getting along at all. One has a very conflicting, violent childhood, right? So this guy can go there if he wants. And he's attempting to be a good, like Kobe Bryant. I have a bit of Kobe Bryant, I have a little bit of Michael Jordan, I have a little bit of this one, I have a little bit of Mother Teresa, right? So he's trying to be that person. He's trying to invent and create this person who is empathetic, who is expansive thinker, community builder. That's what he's trying to do, but where he's coming from is dog eat dog, survive, right? And if you have to kill someone, so be it. Like, he comes from that. So now he was pissed off. So he had gone from this place of the person he wanted to be back to what he knew. And I was trying to get this guy out of a situation that could turn into something that escalates to a place where no one's going to gain anything. We're all going to lose. So the first thing which I did, which I learned back in the days doing doors, is that I just led him away, gently, just listen to him while moving him away, not pushing him, not force, but just a gentle nudge. And then we walked for about 1 kilometer, right? Then for the next 1.5 hours, I just listened. Didn't say a word, just questions. And all this ferocious force, power coming out, but it met no resistance from me. I just let it go. And my ego's not triggered, even though some of it was directed at me for some reason, but so much work all going. After that 1.5 hours was done, yeah, he was able to go from here back towards here. But it took that time. So what I'm hearing from you so beautifully phrased is, when power meets nothing, it's got nowhere to go, right? So it just evaporates into that space. So love it. Question? Yeah.
So Eugene, I've known you in the course of daily life in Bali for some time, and this is my first time seeing you perform in a professional context. And I think everyone here would agree with me that it's very impressive, and that you are a very impressive talent in this space. So a question I would just like to put to you is sort of, when people ask you, how do you differentiate yourself from other people in the world of coaching or self-development, what kind of answer do you give? And maybe you'll think of this question in terms of your book or your books. That is, as an author, you're usually forced to define sort of what makes your book different from other comparable books on the market. So I'm just curious how you answer those kinds of questions.
Great question. For one, I am multicultural. Again, dad from Greece, mom from Denmark, I'm born in the States. So I've wrestled with culture and with perspectives and with a million shades of meaning to a life experience, more than most people. So I see things deeper. I'm an empath. I feel things deep, and I'm willing to go where most people won't. I've got a cultivated beast inside. I know the degree of the degree and limits of my anger, of my sadness, of my pain. Like, that's all. I've been there. I've cataloged it, and so when somebody goes there, it's like, we can go there. We can talk to the real topic. I have a session tomorrow with the CEO, and I'm just warming up because I'm taking him to that place too. So it's inner work. It's the willingness to keep going there, to where it's uncomfortable. And I can do it in different languages, and I can do it with a bit. Here I've been really calm, but I can also do rebel. I can do anger, like receiving it. I can deal with really aggressive men and women, and it's all good. We'll get you there.
like one thing which I do, great question, my brother, thank you. One thing which I do love about shows like this is that, is that we get to discover, because through you sharing you, we get to see more of ourselves, right? Because part of what makes this show alive are those two things I mentioned in the beginning. One is that people inspire people, and the other one is unity and diversity. So that unity and diversity is that we're not from the same place. You're Denmark and Greece, and I'm neither of those. As far as I know, I look in the audience and I see all different colors of the rainbow, and haircuts, and hair colors too. Right? But the thing, that galvanizes, that binds us at that deeper level of what makes us human are those things of wanting to be acknowledged, appreciated, fulfilled, accepted for who we are, and what I see each week is this amazing connection that we all have, and yeah, so I'm very happy that we got the chance to do this. I'm happy that you put your hand up and kind of came forward and said, Rob, let's do this. Do it, Robbie.
Amen, dude. Amen.
Because, through you sharing allows us to go deeper. And whether that happens here and now, while we're here in this room with all these great people, or whether it's something that we do later on tonight or the next few days, is beautiful, because you mentioned that portal earlier on. And this is probably the last thing I'll explain. So the way I see the portal is that it's like a clock, which is conventional. So you've got 1 till 12. Now or 12 till 12. So 12 till 1 this is the stuff that I know that I know. I know my name, I know where I'm from, I know where I live, and da-da-da-da-da. Then 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 this is where, or what I know that I don't know. So I know that a rocket goes into space, but I don't know how the hell it happens. I'm no good when it comes to complex equations, nuclear fission, and so on. That's not me. And then 3 to 12 is this whole area of, these are the things that I don't know that I don't know. And to me, that's where the portal is. So sometimes when we're sitting in the audience and we're just taking this in, and maybe one question enlightens us and the other question kind of we think, oh, okay. But there's a collective energy that's created by all of us being here. And what happens is that these are where the questions come from, and arguably where the answers come from too. But the beautiful thing is, so all of us now, because you're giving value because you're that guy. Everyone here is receiving value because that's what they came here for, and they're open to receiving it. The bit which I love is that you're getting value too, because what happens is that there may be some questions that you've answered, some questions that you've been asked, that maybe you're like, oh, I haven't thought of that for a while, or oh, that didn't come up, or I never realized I thought that way about it, that then open that portal for you too. So that 3 to 12 of this is stuff that I don't know, it might be a reminder, might be an insight. And that's why love is triggered by this, and that to me is the essence of Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, like unity and diversity. Like we all have this fundamental essence of humanity that connects us and binds us all. So I just really want to acknowledge you, my brother, for being that guy, right? Stepping up and letting it go, and sharing your light and wisdom with all of us here, right? So now, I'm going to come back to you in about a minute, and what we do now is that, so I'd like you to close the show. So what that means is that then there may be something that you'd love to say. Maybe you've said it already, maybe you want to reinforce it, or maybe it's something that you wish you had said, but you haven't said it yet. So whatever that is, I'd love you to say it, and then after that we'll close up here. But you've got about a minute to think about it if you need a minute. But in the meantime, I'm going to go back over here. So guys, so 2 or 3 things. So one is, thank you for being here. This is to the in-studio audience. Now, the beauty about this is that we have amazing conversations, and there's a beautiful energy that's created here that all of us are part of, right? It's co-created. So the beauty about coming in person is that after the cameras go off, you get to interact with this beautiful man and with each other, right? So there are things that maybe people that you kind of wondered, I feel I should speak to this guy, or I should speak to this girl. Now you get the opportunity. And there's no coincidences here. You're supposed to be here, and you're supposed to have that conversation, so do not hold back. The second thing is that I just want to thank Tropical Nomad, Ichi, Bella, Guzman, and the team, right? So every week, this is, by the way, this is episode number 97. It's every week, and we haven't missed a week at all, right? The last 39 episodes are filmed here at Tropical Nomad, and the level of, of technical, of visual, sound, vision has leaped, taken a quantum leap, and that's deep thanks to Ichi and the team, so thank you so much. And for those of you who may be here in the audience, or maybe you're at home looking at this going, you know what, I feel drawn to go on the show and be in the same seat as Eugene. If that's you, put your hand up, right? So you either hit me up on social media or DM, or if you're here, come and have a chat to me. Please do, because again, this is how it works, right? It's a collective energy that pulls and tweaks and cajoles and mimics and smiles and touches us in different ways. And if it's touching you in that way, don't let fear hold you back. A little bit of fear is good, but not so much to hold you back. So just come and have a word, and we'd love to have you here on this chair. And it's self-selecting. If you're feeling it, it means you're supposed to be here. It's not about your credentials or what you've done. It's about who you are. So the final thing is that, so remember to tune in every Monday, 6:30. Either come here at Tropical Nomad, or we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook Live, and my Instagram Live went down. I think it's not even on, but usually on Instagram Live as well. So please come and see us and share this. Later on this year, we're going to be scaling this in a whole new direction. Not new, but just scaling it. For now, it's a grassroots initiative, so please share it. Coming up for episode number 100, we've got a few special things coming up. One will be a beautiful woman by the name of Forbes Riley. She'll be on the show. Another one called Joe Ortega. So I'll be recording those podcasts soon. Incredible people on the planet, such as you, my man. And so I'm looking forward to that. But in the meantime, thanks again, guys, for tuning in. And I'm going to pass it over now to Eugene to see us out for the show. And thank you, my brother.
Thank you, man.
Most appreciated.
Thank you, dude. Thank you. A mentor of mine once told me that a majority of life is unconsciously determined. Meaning it's the part of you that doesn't know that you know that's calling the shots. We think we're the captains of our own ships, but my invitation is, what happens if you get curious when you step out of those doors for something that hasn't happened yet, for doing something in a different way, for driving a new route home, and seeing what you learn in the way. Thank you for being here, guys, and thank you for joining us. See you guys soon.